Do you have some kind of event or service that needs to be seen by lots of people live? Are you wondering how you can do that with the least equipment because you need to be in the field or mobile or away from a power source? Would you like to be able to add overlays, titles, text, graphics, transitions, movies, SD card videos, and more? Guys, if that's what you would like to do, that's what we're talking about today. I'm Rob with Robert Ham Photography here in Hampton Roads, Virginia. I've been doing photo, video, weddings, documentary, and corporate work with camcorders and cameras for the past 15 years. I've got a lot of experience, and today I want to share with you the piece of equipment that I use, which is YoloBox Pro, to get all that stuff done. Notice that my entire rig sits on top of this camera. I'm going to share with you how to set that up today. Everything from including additional video sources using wireless HDMI transmitters to even using wireless audio in different sources like that. We're going to go over the best practices that I've got, and you should consider this a tutorial video. If you've already been in the business and you're working with this, share your comments down below and help others out. Stupid comments will be deleted. If you're a newbie and you have a question you want to ask it. I only answer questions from subscribers. So if it doesn't have that little subscribe icon by your name when you ask the question, someone else will have to get to it if they do. But if you want my answer, hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on. Today, we're going to be going over all of this, and I'm going to have an output display so that you can kind of see a little bit about how that works as well. All right, friends, let's talk about this from the ground up. We're going to go over the gear first, so you'll see what I'm using, but this information will apply to a camera just as similar as a camcorder. Today, I'm actually using this HCX1 or UX180 camcorder. It's got a nice zoom. I like it for that reason. Audio out, it's all good to go. We've got YoloBox Pro up front. On the back, we've got a splitter for our audio from our left and our right channels, which is coming in from a device right here. This is the Kamika Boom XU Quad. It's a 4-channel, 4-microphone receiver. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. And let's make sure that we're in there nice. And we've also got a wireless HDMI transmitter that we're going to be bringing video into. There's a couple pieces of equipment that we've got that's not actually on the table that you can see, so I'll pick it up. We've got 4 of these wireless transmitters right here. You can kind of see over there. These are the type of transmitters that I use. They have a built-in microphone. They can also connect via lavalier. I've got 4 of them because sometimes I need to connect to things like a soundboard, and I can very easily just connect an adapter. So when you're thinking about your video setup, your sound setup is actually more important than the rig that you're using for image capture, because if people can't hear, they will not listen. You could have a pretty rough video, 720, 480, but if you have terrible audio, people will tune out. They will continue to watch a video with a lower resolution, even with some glitches, but they won't stick around for bad audio, just the way that it is. Now, that system right there is a UHF system. I've got plenty of videos talking about why I use UHF, but especially in this rig, if you've looked around, you'll understand I've got a lot of Bluetooth and 2.4 gigahertz spectrum stuff happening over here. The UHF system is very helpful because it stays out of that network space and allows me to have multiple things operating in this close proximity without causing crosstalk and interference. That's the biggest reason that I'm using it. And of course, it's got those 4 inputs. The next thing I've got that I use is a tone generator. Now, people might say, Rob, why would I carry a tone generator? I get this question a lot. Can't I just set my levels and everything manually? And yeah, sure, you can. But if you've got the time and you have the ability to use a tone generator, you can use it. Now, most people will say, well, I don't have the money for a tone generator. That's ridiculous. This isn't just a tone generator, right? I don't know if you can see what I'm doing. This is also a field recorder. It's just a small format. In fact, most field recorders today are going to have some form of tone generator built into them. If they don't, buy one that does if you're in the market. And if you've already got one, you can always use another field recorder. It's $100 or so. It's not an expensive piece of equipment, and get it. The reason that's important is because we're going to have 3 different pieces of audio in our signal chain. Let's think about that. We've got our mic system, which is wireless. That comes to the receiver, which sends that out. In this instance, it's routed not to the encoder, which is YoloBox. It's routed through to the camcorder, and I do that for a specific reason we'll talk about in a minute. So the audio comes from the mic into the receiver. It comes in at a certain volume, independent of the volume that it receives on your levels that you set on your audio panel here on your camcorder or in your camera. And that is also independent of the levels that are sent out via the HDMI signal with your audio included over there to YoloBox. So there's a lot of things that are going on right here with your audio signal, and getting your audio set properly is very important to hearing it and not having just nasty audio. So when you want to set things to unity, I've got plenty of videos about it. It starts with your signal chain, and I use a tone generator just like this one. I call it quits. It's easy and it works. The next thing that I'm going to talk about is that audio signal path. I send it into the camcorder for a very specific reason. Video is slower than audio. However, camcorders are very good at syncing that audio and that clock speeds. They have very efficient clocks. This is becoming the norm with, of course, mirrorless cameras, and definitely it is the norm with cinema cameras. But a long time ago, the best way to get no latent or low latency audio and video synchronization was to use a camcorder rather than a mirrorless camera. Today, that's not as much of an issue, but that's something that holds over even now. Because I send my audio into my HDMI 1 or into this camera, when I start talking about audio later on YoloBox, because the audio that I'm getting from my mic is coming from the camera, it's already synced to this source. So I have very little, actually I've never had to adjust my audio latency by working this way. There's something else we'll talk about, multiple camera audio here later when we get into YoloBox, but it's important to know that I don't use all audio follows video, and I use one audio source that I then manage from this control panel right here. I've got the ability to manage my levels on this, but after I get the levels set here to unity with my camcorder, and I know that 1 decibel here is also 1 decibel here, I just use these to send my audio to YoloBox. Setting unity here on YoloBox, which is something I'll show you with the audio input sliders on YoloBox, will allow me to make 1 decibel input here on my audio control on the camera, will make it global everywhere. So I don't need to go in and adjust things on YoloBox, and I won't need to adjust things on the receiver. I'll simply adjust here on my camcorder. Okay, now we've got something else to talk about. We've got another video input. This video input is wireless. It's going to take video from anywhere else that's connected. 300-400 feet away, indoors definitely, and it's going to send it to YoloBox. This has a bunch of different channel settings that I can set it to. The main thing to know here is that once you get this thing on, we're not going to be using anything except the audio or the video from this input. Then when we're talking about YoloBox, this input right here, we've got many different things. From the front, we've got all these inputs. We've got on YoloBox Pro, 3 HDMI inputs, 1 USB input. We've got an HDMI out. We've got mic and line level micro jack in. We've got USB-C. We've also got USB for both for storage on USB-C and the regular USB. We've got for an additional webcam that we could use, and then we've got power to charge. So there are a lot of options that go on right here. Because there's so many things and I've got so much stuff connected to it, I have to use a cage. This cage is by YC Onion. Thanks, Simon. And I got this from Simon. I paid for this. But this design, this import for this cage to sit on top of my camera and have a great fixture for all my gear is just as important as the gear that I'm using. I couldn't run the setup in such a minimalistic enclosure without this cage. So if you don't have one, get one. It's 120 bucks usually, and it's worth every single penny. Okay, let's move on and talk about YoloBox for a second. We've talked a little bit about how things get into it. We're using firmware version 4.3, and yes, YoloBox had a recent update to include quite a few things, such as instant replay, more support for network bonding, just all kinds of major updates. And I love YoloBox for those major updates. Sometimes I hear comments from people in the comments, or I see things talking about, why does YoloBox update so much? Well, yeah, if you're a Nikon or Canon user, even Sony user for that matter, you may not be used to a company that actually listens to you, right? How does it feel to not get software updates after you get the camera other than 1 or 2? You know, Panasonic's been updating their cameras forever. 4- and 5-year-old cameras just got updates on May 2023 from Panasonic camcorders. YoloLive, the company that makes YoloBox, follows that same process. Give people great things and they'll do wonderful things. So that's why they do that here. When we look at this, we've got an interface. I'm going to kind of show you some stuff over here, but let's go ahead and just add. I'm not going to do anything. I could create a live stream. I guess I will. I'm going to name it. It doesn't really matter for me. The name and the date and time doesn't matter in this particular instance. Okay, so now we're actually in the screen. This is the first screen that you get to when you start making some kind of content or you want to go live. And in this particular instance, it's going to show us with where we're going to connect, all the different places that I connect right here. That's the first stream because it wants you to set that up. Let's say we wanted to set that up. We would just turn this on and then we would choose public, private, or unlisted. Whatever we would like for those settings, they're unique to each service that you're using. That's what you would choose there. To go back, you simply tap the back button. Now, it's important to know that with YouTube, the way that I stream mostly, I also go into my Creator Studio, to my live stream dashboard, and I upload additional editing details that I might want to have about this, to include thumbnails, links, descriptions, tags, stuff like that. That can only be done after it's set up here on on YoloBox specifically. So I set it up here, and then I go to YouTube, my control panel, to add those extra things. I do that because I like to have that kind of control. That is completely unnecessary. This will stream, start and stop without going to YouTube, and you can actually start and stop the stream as long as your device is connected through YouTube. I don't use it as a manager for my live stream. I use it as a place to edit additional details, so that's important. As we continue moving on, let's actually look across the bottom. We've got network banding, or bonding, excuse me. This allows you to bond networks to the device, and you can also set your data cap limits and things like that. This gives you the ability to use multiple internet connections to ensure that you have a great connection. This is an excellent feature. Here, we've got all kinds of different overlays that I've built already. They're in the box. They're saved to the SD card. I can create new ones, make them as I want. We've already talked about this. We've got the ability to add guests specifically down here. The guests can join through their mobile phone. They can join through their computer or laptop. They can join audio only, which is great. They can just join through that. They'll get an email to their device and be able to use it. Over here with audio, we'll get into that into a minute, but with your audio, notice that you've got several different types of audio that you can add, to include a delay and to include your infinity or your audio levels, so everywhere from plus 10 decibels down to infinity. We'll go ahead and turn our audio levels on here, and now you'll notice that it's actually showing that we've got audio coming into YoloBox from the camera now. And from there, we've got scoreboards. If you've got that, just completely customizable. And we also have comments. Once you're connected, as you're streaming, you can actually view the comments that come through, and you can reply to them if you so choose. Let's come on back over here to audio. What I normally like to do is take my program audio, keep it on, monitoring audio. That's what you're going to hear out of a headset. Keep that on. And in this instance, I need to make sure that my HDMI audio is brought down in my levels just a little bit. Remember, I talked to you about the fact that I set this to Unity, but right now I'm not at Unity. Okay, so I see that I'm actually going into the red and to the orange right here. This is telling me that I'm around plus or minus 3 decibels, between -6 and -3. And once you get into the red, you're at -0 decibels. I know for a fact that I want to be right at -12 decibels for the majority of my content sound. And for me, in order to get to that green bar, I've got to bring it down by about 20 decibels right here. That's because the YoloLive input is pretty hot. And so as you can see, we're about 21, 18, somewhere around there. Check 1, 2, 3. And we're not going into the yellow too much. We're right there. And that's exactly where I want to be. That's what I'm seeing also on my audio meters here. Now that that's done, because I have already set this up prior to the video with my signal generator, and I set it here to the same Unity, and now we have done this, we are all set to Unity. So now I know that as I update my volume on my camcorder, just by turning this up, you can see that now we're going into the yellow, whereas before we weren't. I know that those adjustments are global adjustments. So I can do those adjustments here, and I know that it's going to stream out that way. All right, the next thing that I like to do is talk about how we get the proper video into YoloBox. So lots of times you're going to have a camera that can export or output 4K video. But YoloBox is going to have to spend some time decoding that video. So you need to go into your camcorder's output settings or your video out settings on your camera and turn it from 4K or system to whatever you want to stream at. And what we like to do here is look at the actual encoding settings. So let's come on over here. We're over here in encoding settings, and in the encoding settings, you can come down here and choose several different things. Constant bitrate, constant quality, variable bitrate. I've done videos on all those. Constant bitrate is going to be your best for good networks. Variable bitrate is going to be your best for data-starved networks. Constant quality is going to be your best for something kind of in between. YouTube likes 3,000 to 6,000 for HD video so that's where we are. I don't like to stream 1080p in less than 5,000 kilobits. And since I'm at 30 frames a second here, I can actually change that to 2997 or 30. I will actually go into my camcorder. In this instance, I can stream out. I can send my video out at 2997. So I changed this to 2997 because I output this camera at 2997 in 1080p. It's expecting 1080p because that's what I've got set there. So now YoloBox doesn't have to work any harder downscaling that 4K signal to a 1080p signal. So now that we know the difference on how we're going to set our frame rate and how we're going to set our bit rate, we can actually go, as we're streaming, up to 8,000 kilobits per second. It's going to tell you that once you're there, you've reached the maximum bit rate. This is important. Most streams for 1080p are going to be, generally you're going to be around 4,000, 3,000. If you have to drop below 3,000, you need to switch over to 720. You would do that up here by tapping and choosing 720. Now, 720 at 2,000 megabits, which is the highest it'll go, is going to sound or going to look a lot better than 1080 at 2,000 megabits. Here, data rate is very important. So the megabits or the kilobits per second streaming rate is what you're looking at. So the resolution is going to be good for detail, but image quality is going to be more affected by your bit rate than your resolution. If you're on a good network where you're streaming fast, go ahead and choose that higher resolution, higher bit rate. However, you will need to do some tests. In order to facilitate a test, YoloLive includes a network test function. It's up here. Sometimes I drag down. We come right over here to the settings and we go into network settings. And from there, I go into network test. And in this particular instance, it's going to show me my upload and download. The big number is going to be your download. That's not the one that you actually care about. The one that you care about is down here when you see more, and it's going to be sharing with you your upload speed. So right now I've got about 14 megabits, 20 megabits per second upload speed. You can change the duration of the test so it'll show a test for a longer or shorter time. That's important because how long you're going to stream depends, well, the bitrate could change over the time that you're streaming, and you'd want to know that ahead of time. So if you're in a rough area and you're trying to stream on cellular and you don't have a bonded connection, this would be very, very helpful. Notice how just sitting here right now, we went from 20 to about 9.3 megabits per second. Whatever this ends up on, I think about the number of people that are going to be there. At funerals, it's hundreds of people most of the time. And they're all going to be using either the cell phone network, which I would be connected to, or the Wi-Fi that's there, which I would also be connected to. So I would have to think about how these people's devices connect and take away a little bit of that bandwidth for everything they're doing. And most of them are going to be streaming too, not realizing that the decedent's family has already paid for professional live stream service because they're a bunch of morons, and it's going to eat the bandwidth again. The entire beautiful service is being streamed by 2 cameras with pro audio, and they're going to sit in the back 200 feet away from the pulpit and hold up their camera and stream. I just don't get it. In any event, that takes away from my network use that I would need to use. Looking at this, considering how many people were there, I will usually take half of this number. And then if there are a lot of people there and I don't have a bonded connection, I might take another half there. So let me show you what that would be. Let's just for shits and giggles call it 10. Half of 10 is 5. Half of 5 is 2.5. So for me, if I was coming over here to this setting, right, then I would go to my encoding rate and I would have to make a choice, right? I said earlier I don't like to stream at 1080 at less than 3,000 kilobits per second. But I'm not going to be able to because I've only got 2.5. Now that's so close you might chance it. But for me, I'd rather switch down here to 720 and go up to 2,000 kilobits per second at 720 and call it a day. Now it's easy, right? Now, because I've done that, I'm almost guaranteed no problems, right? There's very little that can go wrong in this other than the network dropping out. Because of the way YoloBox interfaces with YouTube, when the YoloBox stream ends or is interrupted, YouTube simply pauses your live stream. It doesn't end it. Now, many different streaming services will do that, but this makes it very simple to simply reset the box or troubleshoot your problem. Now, if I know that there's going to be an issue, let's come back over here to my overlays. And we know that this is actually a source that you're seeing. I've just got it closed. We can actually add a source right here. I've got a local video. And in this instance, I might add something like that one, right? And so now, as it ends, I can actually turn on this video. Now, this video happens to have audio connected to it, but I don't have the audio turned on. Currently, local video 1 audio is off. So since local video 1 audio is off, let's turn it on. And now you will see local video 1 audio coming in. That's just pretty music. Okay, now we've got the video that's there. Let's say that we wanted to actually put something on top of the video so that people could hear, like an overlay. Well, we've now grabbed that overlay. Now this is an entire picture that's sitting over top of this video. Notice how it faded out beneath. But what we now have is the ability to have that video continue playing with the audio from that video and have the overlay right here. And this overlay just shows that something's happening. What YouTube will do in this instance is if the video goes down, you can very quickly add this while you're still trying to troubleshoot before you reset the device or go out of the stream, and then YouTube will pause on this picture. Think about that as a troubleshooting step. That's amazing. Now, I won't do that every time because you're relying on YouTube's automated processes to do that. But if you get to it quick enough and you're monitoring, you'll know. Now, how will you know that you're monitoring? Well, you'll know because you see something up here. You've got your kilobits up, your kilobits down, and you also have your frames per second and your drop frames rate up here. So when you see this ratio starting to act up, you have to make a decision at some point. If you're beginning to stream and you get into a spot where you see 20% of drop frames, you have an issue. There's something you must troubleshoot immediately. Now, if you've gotten to your location and you have not done your network tests, shame on you. Absolutely shame on you, because you should have known that. Your dropping frames, right, could be because you're at a bad spot for Wi-Fi or cellular connection inside the location that you are, wherever you are, and you could have just chosen it. I found that strange, oddly specific things are dead zones around columns and pylons that might actually hold up a large room without walls on the side, like you have a big hall setting. That could be it. And I also find that anything with a baffle, so like if you're sitting on top of or underneath a place where a church or some place has a mezzanine area that overlooks and you're underneath the mezzanine or on top of the mezzanine, if you're far away from the edge on top of it, I've found that those are also areas to look out for unless they've got a Wi-Fi router back there. And then if you're underneath it, that could also cause some RF shadow and you could miss your signal as well. Generally speaking, by a window is a good place to be, and because it's backlit, you could know that you're getting a lot of light going the direction that you want, which is often helpful. So that's the first thing, knowing where you're going to set up. The second thing for troubleshooting is being not afraid to recognize that pausing your live stream, restarting the device, and reconnecting might take a minute or two, but your camera is still recording. We'll talk about ABR in a second. And so because of that, you'll have something deliverable to give your client. The minute that you start having problems with internet, you should immediately be thinking, what's your next troubleshooting step? And your next overall troubleshooting step is the delivery of good content for your client, which means you should have been recording. For YoloBox, it would be stepping out and resetting the device, maybe resetting your network connection on your phone, maybe connecting to a different network. All of those things are going to take time, and if you're streaming on YouTube, it's been my experience, if you do the process I showed earlier, it will pause on that stream, on that last image, so it'll look like you've had, look like instead of just a stop in your system, it will actually look like a program break, which is what you want. Okay. The other thing I was talking about was ABR, Always Be Recording. If you haven't pushed your record button inside your camera, shame on you. Shame on you, because I have never in my life gone to a place and recorded and not pushed the record button, right? Anytime that I have had issues, and I've had some problems with YoloBox in the past, I mean, it's equipment. We all do. Your Microsoft computer still, heck, even your Apple computer croaks sometimes and has to be restarted, fails, crashes, all that other stuff. Even your phone has to be reset. This is electronic equipment. There are things that happen to it. But you know what you can control? You can control whether or not you push that button. And all my time of problems and everything else, when I've had to make things right, I've always had the ability to say, hey, I'm sorry that your stream didn't come out the way that we had planned. We did talk about this and set expectations. However, I've got the opportunity for you. I'm happy to refund your money. Or I was recording an internal recording. I can actually give you the internal recording. This is something we talked about. Now, in my contracts, this is a little bit of extra stuff for you. In my contracts, it's very simple. I explain that I'm going to go and do a network check and all that other stuff and do my job. I've got a whole list, a checklist, and I'm not giving it to you. If you can't make your own checklist on how to make sure your gear works because you don't know where to start, then honestly, you don't have enough experience yet. But you're getting there because you're watching this video, but you don't have enough experience yet to put someone's precious memories in your hands if you can't come up with your own checklist. I mean, it's that simple, right? You got to know your gear, know what you're doing. That means you have a well thought out mind and a well thought out plan. In fact, that's exactly what happens with negligence, gross negligence, when it comes to a civil suit. If you were to ever be sued, the judge is going to say, well, what did you do to protect against these clients' precious memories being lost? And you say, Your Honor, I put together in my contract, I have a checklist, so this was an act of God. In my contract, it explains what an act of God is. Hey, I used double memory cards, I went through my checklist, I tested the bandwidth on 3 different times, I had 2 cameras there, I was recording always as a backup, the stream went down, and I was able to offer the delivery of the final product as an HD video or return the client's money. Which one do they want? The judge is going to look at that 9 times out of 10 and it say, yeah, hey, you did do your due diligence. This was an act of God. It's outlined in your contract. The contract was signed. Your client knew about it. There's not going to be a problem here. They're going to side with you and to give the client your option instead of whatever the client's damages may be. Generally speaking, I'm not speaking from experience here because I've never had to go to court for anything like this because my contract's well thought out and I explained this to my clients ahead of time. So they recognize that, hey, we're going to attempt to stream in 1080p. We might even drop that down to 720 or 480 depending on the network circumstances. We're in a highly mobile area with military fighter jets all over the place and a gigantic traffic congested area for aircraft. If we're on the beach or outdoors in many locations around here, they use radar or signals, electromagnetic signals of some sort that will interfere with cellular and live stream services like that. That's something to know about. One of the places I live stream weddings is on the execution, the takeoff path for NAS Oceana. As the jets leave that 4 or 5 mile stretch that they go straight out over the ocean at 22nd Street, guess what? You're right underneath their path. And all that radar and instrumentation and takeoff and landing stuff can really affect a live stream. So I know these things, so I share them with my clients ahead of time so they're aware of it. And they always ask, hey, well, what's your solution? And then when I tell them I'm recording internally, if anything goes down, I'm sorry for your guests that they will have done it, but I'm happy to give you the recording or your money back. Which would you like? And they'll say, in that instance, I think we'd prefer to have the recording. Great, no problem. That's in the contract for what they've signed, and now that's what they're going to get. Now I know that if there are any problems that I can't troubleshoot on location, I've either got to give them their money back or give them a recording. And guess how many times they want their money back? When Pawpaw's in the ground and everybody's saying that final salute, they don't want their, in this case, $500 or $1,000 back. They want that funeral service. And because I pushed that little button, they got it. Now, this may be a rant. You might think to yourself, geez, Rob, you're talking like all this stuff. But man, have you thought about what would happen if your father passed away and the person you hired to photograph and do the videography for them was like, sorry, can't give you what you paid for? You would be upset. These are precious memories and you need to take them as seriously as precious memories. Same thing gets even worse if you're photographing or if you're live streaming like soccer events or football or stuff like that for even local schools. Yeah, you do one mess up on that where you can't redeliver for your school, your local schools and stuff, you just won't ever work again. That's as important as the audio, which was even more important than the video. Knowing how to stream and having a plan of what to do if anything goes wrong. When people look at this, they say, wow, you look like you're with the news crew and everything. And yeah, that might sound great, but we all know how we're geeks. We like this gear stuff. But the reality is, if you're not prepared to do the other things also on the paperwork side, then it's just not there. Finally, when we do want to add another video source, we've got several. We can add that additional live stream from another camera somewhere else if they have their own internet connection and are somewhere else not on the same geographic location. We can also do it right here, so that if we've got another camera, I often use 2 cameras and just stream the HDMI source right over. We can add additional PDF and images. We've got our HDMI 1, 2, and 3. It's as simple as that. When you want to choose the type of fade or transition that we're using, we come right over here to our settings and we go up to our transitions. Now, local switching settings isn't actually the transitions. We want the transitions down here, and we can choose how we want to do it. Fade to black, we want to dip. I usually like just a nice fade, and I do the 1.5 seconds. That gives it the ability to just fade across real easily. There are many different settings that come in here to include auto switching. Now, I have absolutely fallen in love with auto switching and the way YoloLive implemented it. So I connect my cameras. I don't have a bunch of cameras here, but it also works with whatever video source you have. So if I wanted to play a video source, I could, but I don't usually because I'm doing funerals or weddings. And so what I'll do is I'll set one camera up as static. I'll take another camera that I'm manning. The other camera is a wide angle lens usually, or sometimes I'll connect a transmount system to it so that I can zoom it from over here. That has to do with Zinion's stuff. It doesn't matter to this video. Or it could have another camera operator. It doesn't matter. Going into these settings allow me to have an auto start to the switch once I define my settings, and then how long each camera is going to switch to. So if someone's on the pulpit, I've got a tight shot on them talking, and I've got a wide shot that shows a little bit of the church proper and some of the pews or something like that. And then I can just turn that on, and now all I have to do is allow that to switch between the two, monitor my audio through headphones, and watch my encoding bitrate. It takes off such a menial, repetitive task of switching your video source that it makes it extraordinarily easy. And once you get it going, it's simple. Once you set it up and everything else like that, you can choose whatever you want, and then it will show an icon right here that says start or stop the auto switch based on these settings. So if you wanted to go manual and switch manually from time to time, you absolutely could. These are the things that I use the most. There are many different settings that you have in here. I have not used network bonding very much because it's just come out. I know that other devices use it. I can't wait to test that feature out a little bit more. In my limited use and research of it and just talking about it with the guys over at YoloLive and everything else, and the little bit of testing that I've done, not any on a funeral, but in my own testing, it's absolutely awesome. So I'm looking forward to using that on some funerals as they come up. And that is my overall overview of how to use and set up YoloBox to work for live streaming on your camera or camcorder. I hope that you've enjoyed it. If you have, don't forget to leave a like and a comment down below. If you didn't recall, I don't answer any questions unless you're subscribed, so click that subscribe button. Also click the little notification icon and ask whatever question you got. I'll take care of it. Guys, I want to thank you for watching and remind you, I will catch you on the flip side. Bye for now.